on his arm to reassure him. She hated to see anyone distressed, ached to make things right. But he pulled away from her abruptly, shock and annoyance on his face. She cringed. She'd only been trying to help, and he'd rejected her. Again. Now, of course, she was questioning the wisdom of having him here more than ever. But she had a chance to make this cold, indifferent man fall in love with food, to make his world a brighter, more joyful place, and she couldn't resist it. And the plan had one other redeeming feature, she supposed. Will was pretty easy on the eye. He wore another grey suit today. Maya doubted he owned any other colour, and a crisp white shirt, open at the neck. She guessed that he'd come straight from the office, no matter that it was a Sunday, and he had the look of a man who spent too many hours staring at a computer screen. But the austerity of his clothes highlighted the sharp steel of his eyes and the hint of shadow below his cheekbones. A calculating look came over those grey eyes then, and she could practically see the cogs turning as he tried to turn the situation to his advantage. She looked over the evidence of his apprehension: set shoulders, grim face, flat voice. She realized that she was never going to convince him of the joys of her cuisine if they were both approaching the week like this. One of them would have to make the effort to brighten the mood in here. She'd pasted on a happy face often enough before. She could do it now. There was no getting away from it. He was gorgeous. She'd noticed it the first time she'd set eyes on him, but even with those sharply defined cheekbones, the hint of stubble, the lips she was dying to taste, there was one flaw she couldn't overlook. He just wasn't quite there. Any time she'd sensed she might be getting a look at the real Will Thomas, every time a conversation took a turn away from the strictly rational and objective, he'd disappeared into himself for an instant. Sometimes the shutters just slammed down. At other times, they wavered long enough for her to see something lingering, a tiny suggestion of past hurts, perhaps, that had made him the way he was. Whatever it was that she'd glimpsed, it was enough for her to know that getting involved would be bad news. She'd spent the first 18 years of her life devoid of affection, lacking warmth and love. She'd been an unwelcome surprise to older parents, shunted from nannies to boarding school and back again, and she had never stopped trying to impress them, never stopped hoping that one day she'd make them proud. Even when she'd gone to a prestigious university, as they had, and completed her history degree, as she'd thought they'd wanted, it hadn't been enough for them. Her whole life she'd been a disappointment to them. But when she'd discovered her passion for food, the joy that she could bring to her housemates and friends with her cooking, she'd also found the warm glow she could create in a room. She wanted, needed, to live her life among people who were happy and contented, and she'd do everything she could to make those around her feel that way. So she'd used the money her parents had given her. She would have swapped it in a heartbeat for genuine affection, but that was the one thing they'd never offered, to start her culinary training and then her business. She wouldn't allow herself to develop feelings for someone who was never going to be able to return them. "So, are you ready for this?" Maya eyed the knives laid out on the scrubbed oak countertop and wondered if this had been the wisest move. It looked as if she had some sort of medieval torture lined up for them, and from the resigned, stoic set of Will's face, she could see that he was expecting nothing less. She didn't like the thought of hurting him, and wondered again whether she was doing the right thing. But he had come to her wanting to learn, and she was determined.